Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about class population in Classic Wrath and whether there will be any kind of issues. To be honest guys, when it comes to Wrath of the Lich King, I'm not saying that every single DPS or tank or healer spec is balanced and equal to each other, but the difference between them is much slimmer than it was, say, for instance, between a Rep Paladin and a Fury Warrior in Classic WoW. So, in general, there will be less class stacking and slightly more balanced setups in Wrath of the Lich King because, yeah, most classes will be fairly balanced. I definitely think there's some that are more played than others, but to be honest, there'll be differences based on server to server, in my opinion. Like, some classes will probably get stacked by the hardcore guilds for certain phases, but it won't be as crazy as Classic or TBC. And the concept of a support class is just... it's a little bit meh. I'm not saying that support classes don't bring a decent amount of support to a raid. Most people just kinda, in Wrath, they don't really care that much about the quality of life improvements of bringing a Shadow Priest, for instance. Because to be honest, you really just want, like, really good DPS and a Shaman to, you know, Bloodlust or Heroism, and you're pretty much Bob's your uncle. There's obviously many different buffs and debuffs in Wrath of the Lich King, and several classes can provide the same debuff or buff. So a lot of the time it isn't absolutely essential to bring a specific spec for its value that it brings to a raid, because another DPS can bring it anyway. That does more DPS anyway, so you know what I mean? But nonetheless, I'm going to tell you which classes I think will be slightly overpopulated, which are going to be fairly balanced, and the two classes which are probably going to be more on the rare side. So first of all, we have the Death Knight. Okay, early on, I think a lot of people are going to be rolling Death Knight because it's the best class in the game, but also because they are really, really good early on in Wrath of the Lich King, and to be honest, they're really good for the whole of Wrath of the Lich King, and the ease of access of making a Death Knight ult is really easy because they start at level 55. So yeah, there will be a lot of Death Knights. If I'm going to be honest, it probably will be fairly difficult to get a raid spot or a guild spot as a Death Knight. So if you plan to play Death Knight, or you know, you're starting to talk about even now, talking with the guild now, like, yo, I'm, you know, we want to roll Death Knight if Classic Wrath comes out, you know, get prepared. Now the next fairly overpopulated class is going to be a Paladin, and this because every single spec for the Paladin is really good. You know, they're arguably the best healer in the game, arguably the best tank in the game, and then later on they're arguably the best DPS in the game. Well, at least, like, you know, top 5 specs. The only thing I will say is you probably won't see many Rep Paladins early on in Wrath of the Lich King because they scale to get better. More about Ulduar, Trial of the Crusader kind of period, that's when they start to really pump. But yeah, you see probably a lot of Holy Paladins and tanks. Like, you really don't see Warrior tanks that much anymore because Paladin and Druid are just that much better, and Death Knight as well, actually. I think another class which is going to be very overpopulated early Wrath is going to be Warlocks, partly because so many people are playing a Warlock in TBC and won't want to re-roll, and Warlocks are the best DPS spec early on in Wrath. We're talking like Nax Rammus, and yeah, they are actually pretty good for, I would say, like the first half of Wrath of the Lich King. So yeah, there's going to be many Warlocks. And I think Warriors will also get very overpopulated when Ice Crown Citadel rolls up, because that's when Warriors start doing nutty damage. And a lot of people want to take advantage of that. Won't surprise me if many people in the more hardcore guilds will play something like a Warlock but also have a Warrior ult just to mess around with and keep geared up for when Ice Crown Citadel does, you know, finally come out, and then they'll totally re-roll to that Warrior. Now let's talk about the balanced classes, you know, Druid, Mage, Priest and Hunters. They're the ones you're going to probably see fairly equally. You see, yeah, just a normal balanced amount of these classes. Obviously some specs like the Balanced Druid, the Feral Druid and the Shadow Priest are probably going to be a bit rarer than the other specs. But overall, you don't see too many of these classes, and you don't really see too little either. Now let's talk about the rare classes. From my experience, it's normally Rogues and Shamans, which are fairly less common in Wrath of the Lich King. I think that's probably mainly because most Rogues, you know, play PvP. And I normally play Alliance, so it's probably a bit biased here. You don't normally see many Shamans of the Alliance because a lot of people do not like playing Draenei. Whereas, like, you know, people have been playing cool Shaman races into Classic WoW on the Horde side. So you probably see more Shamans on the Horde side, a bit less on the Alliance side. But obviously what's interesting about a rogue is their DPS is just disgusting all the way through Wrath of the Lich King. They're one of the best, well, top 3 melee, well, top 3 DPS overall for basically the whole of Wrath of the Lich King. They're really, really strong. Just don't see many people playing them. It's weird, but it's only my experience anyway. Maybe loads more people play rogues this time round, who knows. And then shamans are obviously always in high demand because you always want a little cheeky bloodlust in your raid group. But in Wrath of the Lich King, they're not exactly in extremely high demand like they are in TBC. You know, in TBC, it's really good to have about 5 shamans. It's absolutely no problem. But in Wrath, you can get away with 1 because Bloodlust and Heroism is totally a raid-wide spell now with a 10-minute debuff. I mean, to be honest, guys, when Wrath of the Lich King rocks up, it's just going to be way more like retail. The only real issue is going to be for a warrior, okay? Now, the issue with a warrior is, obviously their DPS spec is Fury, but Fury requires armor penetration crit. You know, it has to get good stats in order for it to begin to do good DPS. You're not going to get that early on in Wrath of the Lich King, so I'm not going to lie. Fury Warrior, DPS sucks balls early on in Naxxramas. So most warriors will probably play arms in early Naxxramas, and they're probably going to be the least desired class, really. I mean, the debuff that arms provides is actually really nice when you've got like other melee DPS and hunters. But the problem is with a Fury Warrior is all the buffs that a Fury Warrior can provide to the raid can be provided by a different class. Plus, you have to give a warrior, or Fury Warrior, 2 two-handed weapons, okay? Which don't exactly drop often, and there's, you know, limited options. So you have to give a Fury Warrior 2 two-handed weapons in order for them to do much worse DPS than a Death Knight or a Ret Paladin that only requires 1 weapon. To be fair, Ret aren't exactly, you know, that great in Naxxramas either, but Death Knights definitely do a lot more damage, basically double the damage of a warrior with a 1 two-handed weapon. But in the long run, you know, later on in Wrath of the Lich King when Ulduar, Trial of the Crusader comes out, I think warriors will obviously start to do more damage and take advantage of their cleave damage, and they'll be considered a, you know, a good DPS to bring to a raid. So it's only going to be difficult for a warrior in that first phase of classic Wrath. But overall, the class balancing is just so much better in Wrath, so we've got all that to look forward to. You can literally just play anything you want and make it work. That's what's so great about Wrath of the Lich King. It's why other private servers are so popular. Anyway, my name is MetaGoblin. Until my next video, ciao.